I think of all the ways that this episode could have ended, I wasn't expecting a mecha-style dragon to come crashing down looking quite menacing towards Sispel, and honestly, that's probably the best way to set up the final episode for our last Crusade. After last week's okay episode, I wouldn't claim it was a bad one, just an alright one all things considered. This was definitely a step in the right direction. The first half wasn't anything really to write home about. It was pretty cut and paste of what we would expect from our last Crusade in these types of moments, but the second half with the moral dilemma of what it means to fight and what you fight for, and seeing Sispel's resolve and why she's so determined to turn to Hsieh of all people to help protect her and her mother after using her ability to see a traitor's plan that's going to take her out and basically plunge both sides into total chaos. You would think someone like Hsieh would be kind of pretty okay with that, being like, okay, this actually makes a whole lot of sense because, peace negotiations, the way we're fighting, like, is there any real possibility even with Alice's help? It's kind of a risky thing, but to avoid an all-out war that could happen at a moment's notice, that seems like something he might be more willing to fight for. But at the same time, it's totally in character for him to say, as much as I want to avoid something like that, it's not simply just wanting to avoid a war, I'm trying to stop conflict that's been there for 100 years. And while you could say that's a fool's ignorance, how something like that, if it's been going on for 100 years, is going to go on for another 100 years, or at least until one side wins, you understand why he would not switch sides to simply stop a queen from getting assassinated, because it will avoid conflict on his side because he's already on conflict with his side. So it's definitely an interesting one because he's telling her to trust someone close to her, which is obviously Alice. And the idea of her being so, not able to trust anyone, you could argue, can't she, see into the future, rewind the past, see what's going on, sort of a thing, to understand that Alice is a good person? But at the same time, she is so kind of fearful of who's going to assassinate her next. It's definitely understandable why she's so gung-ho about only trusting in the one person who set her free and basically was branded a traitor from his point of view and her point of view. There's not a lot that she can trust in this world, but someone who was on the enemy side who set her free and got demoted and almost exiled, if not executed, it's understandable why she would go to such lengths. I was a little interested to see what was going on with the sister as well as the maid side, because I would think that Sispel would have told everyone about Hsieh, but at the same time, I kind of understand why she didn't, because one, she didn't know his name up until the newspapers and things like that, but also she's been so adamant about not showing anyone. The whole idea that she can't trust anyone, it's probably been quite a while of her knowing that something bad's going to happen and kind of locking herself away. So we get some clarification there. And obviously we know Alice, Hsieh, as well as Sispel are going to meet up probably at the same location, and there's probably going to be some sort of cliffhanger where there's going to be potential romantic tension, maybe also potential routes to kind of bring the sides together. But it's going to be fascinating to see, because most likely what's going to happen is Sispel and Alice will part ways with themselves together, where Hsieh will go with his side, but it'll probably set up some sort of potential of oh, there's definitely a route for them to work together, but obviously we're not going to rush into that by episode 12. The matter of will we get a second season or not remains to be seen, but there's good potential for the final episode, I think. I think when Our Last Crusade is at its absolute best is when it puts its head down and really focuses on the most important aspect, the themes that the story has going for it. The idea of two sides that are in this pointless conflict where you have two very noble people, now three, who want to avoid that conflict, different ways of thinking of how to do so. Obviously, they both want Hsieh to come over to their side for different reasons, but still, you understand where they're coming from, and you don't feel like it's simply, oh, they're just in love with the boy and that's why they wanted. For someone like Sispel, this is the man who set her free and destroyed his own life to do so. She was his enemy, there's no reason for him to do so. Someone like Alice looks at Hsieh as this very noble hero who she wants on her side, not only for a great warrior, she knows that he's someone that she can trust in. The fact that he came to her rescue and things like that, or even Rin's rescue, right? There's a lot of things that are at play. While there is that romantic tension, you can also argue there's good character building that has been built up. I do think this is a show that has too many cooks in the kitchen. I think there are too many characters for what the anime is able to do. Obviously, light novels have more time to flesh out different things, but you can just look at the captain's kind of storyline right now. Yeah, it's interesting that she has this crest that she has to kind of conceal, and it's interesting that Jin's saying, hey, maybe we can get the same type of technology that was already used on us to conceal it, we just have to look in the market, we're in a neutral city. That's interesting, but at the same time, you can't really argue that this plotline has been overly interesting, considering how much time we have left to really do anything with it. I think it would have been better to more dedicate just simply on Hsieh, Alice, and Sispel's kind of storyline, and even the sister that we got introduced to, who's turning to this masked servant to kind of like make the decision for her. If I have to make this decision to see if my sisters are traitors, I'm going to use my heart and not hurt them or punish them accordingly. I need you to do so, and that's why him and his goons come in to kind of destroy everything that was being built up. It's not that I dislike the other characters, I just feel like in the anime medium, based on what we have to do, maybe it'd be different if it was a 24 consecutive run. But because, you don't know if you're getting that second season, each anime episode to produce is a lot of money, so the idea of having a one core ep does feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities with the side characters, but the main ones that are important, Alice, Hsieh, Sispel, even the mother at this point in time I think is fairly interesting. There's these really interesting narratives at play, but when you focus for half the episode at the beginning on these other side characters here, you're like, oh, there's something to do here with, but unfortunately there's not enough time to really flesh out this narrative. Every time we feel like they're doing something, they just either come in to do a little action sequence or they come in to meet up Hsieh. And it's like there's room to do more with them, but unfortunately with the episode count that we have, it feels more like we're wasting precious runtime that could be focused on these more interesting characters, is the best way to put it. With that said, I'm still loving the show, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've been coming up here for now 11 weeks saying I enjoy this show. I definitely enjoyed it more in the intro than I did in the middle portion, but the end portion kind of matched more up with the intro with the whole idea of the war and what they can do with it. I mean, we've had some great action pieces and we've had some great drama as well. And I think this episode had just as equal of drama as we've seen with Hsieh and Alice themselves. And that's what I like about the show, is that when it's at its best, it's when it's serious. It's not being goofy, it's not being ridiculous. I mean, the ridiculousness does have its moments. I mean, there's a lot in the intro with Alice and Hsieh, and the comedy I thought was really well done. But this is something that I feel like with where we're at in the story, when it keeps its head more focused, is when it's at its absolute best. And that's why I think I like it more when it's focusing more with Hsieh on the sister side rather than his own companion side, which is a little weird to say, but I just find it to be the most interesting aspects, all things considered. Overall, I definitely think this was a strong episode. It was compelling, and I think it was beautifully directed. I mean, we pretty much have most of the episodes set in a more sunset location to then we obviously get nightfall. And it's a good transition. I think the sunset kind of like indicating that things are about to change, and I mean characters like Jin are noticing as such. And then the idea of switching over to nighttime where pretty much everyone's grouping together for this final battle, which should be pretty cool. I don't think it'll be anything as crazy as the, insane monster that we fought a few weeks back. But there is potential, especially considering how good what seems to be 3D has been rendered. It looks very well blended, and I think nighttime scenes are always best for 3D type objects, so hopefully next week we'll have a really cool fight, especially with all the magic and lasers blast. I mean, we know Alice is going to be popping up, we know Sispel's there, we have Hsieh as long as he has a sword. There should be a lot of different elements at play that should be rather fascinating, all things considered. And while we know we're not rushing to an anime original ending, I am interested to see how conclusive they will make the final episode as they wait to see if the production will get greenlit for more or not. I mean, the studio has had pretty much all their projects as of late get a second season, so I wouldn't be shocked if this one did. I'm sure it's doing well in Japan, merchandise, streaming, and all that kind of stuff, so it'll be interesting to see. I know the West wasn't the biggest fan of it, and I kind of get it because it isn't the most craziest of anime this season, but I do think it's worth a lot of people's attention if they're looking for a different style of military story, and I think there's a lot of potential going forward. This is a pretty good episode. Last week was okay, this one was pretty good. If we go out on an excellent episode next week, I won't be complaining in the slightest. I'd be interested to hear what everyone think of this week's episode of Our Last Crusade and the interesting dilemma that Sispel brought up to Hsieh. Who do you think he should fight for, with the idea that if he doesn't fight for the mother side right now, that there's going to be this all-out conflict? Let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave, like, share, your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.